Welcome everybody to the 9/11 Tribute Museum's virtual My 9/11 story. Today you'll be hearing a personal story from Steve Cascarelli, who is a 9/11 first responder. If you have any questions for Steve, please feel free to add them to the comment section and I'll be happy to get those questions over to Steve for you to get answered. So without any further ado, I'll give the floor up to Steve to share his personal story. Steve, take it away.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for joining. It's a pleasure for me to be here to share some of my experiences from down there. Again, my name is Steve Cascarelli. I am a retired member from the New York City Fire Department. I was an officer, a lieutenant, and my story actually started the day before. I had gone to work in my regular company, Engine 225, which is located in Brooklyn, New York, just across the Brooklyn or the Manhattan Bridge from the southern end of Manhattan. I had gone to work the night before, and the following morning, I was continuing on duty. That day, I was doing a 24-hour shift altogether. And that morning, of course, everything happened. At about 8:46 in the morning, the North Tower was struck, and we were waiting in the firehouse for our time to go. Our adjoining company had gone in already with the chief. And later on that day, we finally got the call to go. I can't quite remember exactly the time that we left the firehouse, but once we got down there, we had gotten down there just after the collapses had occurred. So we were basically out of harm's way that we aware of at the moment. But on the way down there, what me and my crew didn't realize was how this event was going to affect our bodies, something we didn't really give any thought to. We basically have five main senses in our body. And the first one that that affected me was my eyesight, because when we approached the bridges to cross over the East River into southern Manhattan, we saw that dust cloud just hovering over the island. It was very eerie because it was like a wall of smoke right in front of us. Once we crossed over the bridge and we entered that cloud, our other senses, pretty much all of them, immediately clicked in together. So then I can smell the bitterness in it. I could feel the grains of the dust on my fingers. Even when we breathed it in, you could feel the sharpness in your lungs. You can actually taste it. And even what we heard, and initially when we got down there over the bridge, we heard absolutely nothing because the whole southern end had been completely evacuated of all cars and people. Everybody went home, which was a very eerie sight for a place like New York City. There's always people driving and walking around the streets. When we finally got down to the site to operate, my hearing and my sight then re-registered, because now I can hear everybody working, the banging of tools, the calling of people over our walkie-talkies, and then what I saw. And what I saw was it was just massive destruction. There was 16 acres of ground that were actually even more than that. But all 7 World Trade Center buildings were completely destroyed, including some others on the outskirts across the street. When we got there, what used to be 2 110-story buildings were now 2 piles, as we called it, the north and the south pile of debris that was not much more than an 8 to 10-story building. So if you could kind of picture that, I don't know if you can, but the site was, it was devastating. I was amazed at how something so big could be reduced to something so little. When we got down there, our instructions were really very simple. It was get onto the pile and start digging. That was really about it. We had really no power tools to work with. We had to park about 2 or 3 blocks away from the site because when they came down, the debris spilled out onto all of the side streets for about 2 or 3 blocks. You couldn't drive in. Everything had to be walked in. So we hopped on the north pile and we did just that. We started digging. We were looking for people that may have survived the collapse. And at the end of the day, actually at roughly noon or just after noon the following day, the last person was found. The 18th individual that did in fact survive the attack, the collapses, was pulled out of the rubble. But while we were down there, we were digging, and people were looking specifically for me. Now, not that I'm special, and I'm not, but I did have special training in a particular unit that was down there called the Field Communication Unit. I was assigned to that unit for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and I had since transferred into this new unit. But they were down there and they needed extra help to work there. There's only one field communication unit in the entire city of New York. It's a very, very unique unit. And what they do is they go out on major incidences and they assist the chief with coordinating the event. We work with logistics. We know where all the units are, where they're working, who's in reserve, who went home, who's on R&R. We help them with communication, with the members in the field, including dispatcher's office, recording information. The list goes on. So we basically, we help the chief in charge with what the chief is doing. So I was pulled off the rubble and my team was given to another lieutenant, and I was reassigned temporarily to the field communication unit. So there was always 2 officers. There's usually only 1, but in this case, there were 2 every shift. And my partner had his responsibilities and I had mine. I had radios around my neck, including a clipboard and a pad of paper and a pencil. Those were my main tools, my only tools. So I would record all information that was taken during the day, any requests, and at the end of the shift, transpose these notes into our journal. It's basically like a diary of what happened during the day. And it was very hectic. The World Trade Center site was divided into 4 quadrants, and in each quadrant, there was a big chief in charge of each one. And they all had a radio on their own particular frequency, which meant I had to wear 4 radios around my neck at minimum on each of those frequencies so I could communicate with all of the chiefs. And my radios were going off constantly. So I was doing a lot of writing in my notepad. That was kind of my day. Or my shift, I should say. We were doing shifts of 24 hours on duty and then 24 hours off duty while we were down there. And there was really no time to take a break. So once you got down there and you started working, it was pretty much 24 hours straight. You were working until you got home, and then you could take care of yourself. You can eat and take a shower and do what you have to do. And then the following day, you would come back and start it all over again. Nobody complained what we did. We knew we had a job to do, a major job, and that's what we concentrated on when we got down there. Nobody complained about the fact that we had to work 24 hours straight and without any rest. But for me, in order to get myself through a shift, with all of the death and the destruction that was in the area, I knew that I had to try and cope with this some way. And my way of doing that was to make myself numb to what had happened with all of the death and the destruction that was around there. Because after a short while, I was telling you about our sense of smell. Well, the odor of death was then starting to mingle in the air, and you just couldn't get away from that. And I could feel my emotions starting to well up, and I could not afford to, at least I felt I couldn't afford to have my moment while I was down there, because my job was communicating with an awful lot of people that were down there. So that's why I made myself numb, and it worked for me. And I was able to stay in that mode for quite some time. But about 3 weeks later, a series of events happened on one particular shift that brought that humanity in me back. Again, about 3 weeks later, on a day shift, it was a beautiful day, and I got a blister, of all things, on the heels of one of my feet. And not that a blister is that much of a big deal. It's not. But if you're forced to walk and work on it for an extended period of time, that blister is going to start to get worse and get very raw, start to bleed to the point where it's very difficult to even just stand in one place. And that time was coming upon me very quickly. On that same day, a brand new EMS station had opened up directly across the street from where I was posted in the fire department command post. And then all of a sudden, a little bit later on that shift, things kind of went quiet. There was a lull in the moment. My radios were not going off. So everybody was used to what they were doing. They were able to find resources on their own without having to come to me for it. So I took advantage of the moment and I gave all my radios to my partner. And I says, look, I got to go across the street for about 5 or 10 minutes. I'll be right back. So I went across the street, sat down, and the EMS worker said for me to take my shoes and socks off. And she disappeared into the back to go get gauze pads and Band-Aids, whatever she needed to fix my blister. While she was away from me, it was also a first time that I was really by myself. And I sat down, which was probably the first time I was able to actually sit down in 3 weeks. And I just felt so comfortable in this chair. I just kind of melted into it. And I got very physically relaxed, but I also got mentally relaxed. And that relaxation kind of caught me by surprise, because now it allowed these memories that I had gathered in the previous 3 weeks, and I tucked them away into the back of my head. They were coming to the front now, and I was visualizing very quickly all of these experiences I had already gone through in the previous 3 weeks. And now I could feel my emotions starting to come back, and I was having a heck of a time fighting it off. She finally came back out. She fixed up my foot, and I was ready to walk back out again. And she sat down right next to me, and because she could see in my face that there was something else bothering me. It wasn't just the blister anymore. And she just simply asked me very humanely, very simply, any one of you would do it to a friend of yours, what's going on? It looks like something's bothering you. Do you want to talk? Let me know what's going on. That's all she did. And my emotion at that moment spilled out, and I fell apart in her arms. I don't know how long I was there. It could only have been about a minute or two. I finally was able to gather myself somewhat, and she gave me some very simple words of advice. She said, look, I don't know what you're doing out there to take care of everything and everyone, but you do have to remember there is one more person that you need to take care of. And that person's you. You got to stop for a minute, even if it's for just a couple of seconds. Take a deep breath, sit down if you have to, get a bottle of water and take a couple of sips and give yourself a moment. I'm sure you can afford to do that for yourself. And she was right. I needed to do that. And from that point on, especially particularly the following day, I was able to handle myself a little bit better down there, emotionally anyway. Moving forward, I was able to do some grieving, which I didn't allow myself to do for 3 weeks, and get that out of me, as well as work at the same time. So that particular day, with those events that happened and running into that EMS worker, was it turned out to be a really good day for me, because it just helped it helped to get me through. So I'm just trying to give you a picture of what not just myself, but probably many, many other people down there were going through. That would include PD, EMS, civilian workers down there, construction workers, the list goes on. Everybody was doing what they had to do to try and get it through. And they were probably suffering very similarly to what I was going through. So everybody's got a different way of going through it. That was mine. So having said that, I'll give it back to Kwaku if you have any questions for me. But thanks so much for listening, and I will anxiously await to see and hear your questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve, so much. It's always an honor to hear your story, and it's just so meaningful and important for people to understand what it was like to be down there and understand that toll that it takes and how you get through it. And that advice is advice that people can take in their own lives.
Oh yeah,
do something
for
that's
sure. Yeah, because that's what I've done every day since then. I try and remember that moment I had with her. Yeah.
So as Steve noted, please feel free to ask him questions as this is premiering and as it is just on our feed. Please feel free to add questions to the comment section, and I'll be happy to get those questions over to Steve to get them answered for you. I know he's always happy to answer your questions, so please feel free to ask them. There's never a bad question. So with that, we're going to conclude this program. We also do these programs live on Instagram, usually throughout the week. So feel free to follow us on Instagram at 911 Tribute Museum. And actually, if you watch this tomorrow, Steve will be on there. And tomorrow, that's November 20th. Steve will be on there doing a live program. So feel free to follow and watch that program there as well.
Okay.
So once again, Steve, thank you so much for sharing your story. And thank you all for watching. We greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.